The massive interstellar cruiser glided silently through the vacuum, its sleek frame shimmering under the distant light of unfamiliar stars. On board, humanity's first student exchange delegation buzzed with excitement. Lena tapped her foot nervously against the cold metal floor of the shuttle compartment, her restless energy barely contained. She exchanged a grin with her friend Amir, who sat beside her, bouncing his knees in anticipation. "Can you believe we're actually doing this?" Lena whispered, her voice hushed with awe. "The Galactic Institute of Learning. We're making history." Amir grinned, tapping his tablet. "Yeah, think they have coffee here? 'Cause if not, this might be a short trip for me." Lena chuckled. Around them, other human students murmured excitedly, their voices rising and falling in waves of anticipation. The ship docked with a gentle shudder, and a sterile, robotic voice announced their arrival in crisp galactic standard. "Welcome, Earth delegation, to the Galactic Institute of Learning. Please disembark in an orderly fashion." The students shuffled toward the exit, and as the doors slid open, they were greeted by the sight of towering spires and shimmering walkways that floated midair. The entire campus seemed to hum with a serene, almost oppressive silence. Alien students from dozens of different species moved with precision, their steps measured and synchronized as if operating under an invisible but strictly enforced protocol. Lena felt a shiver run down her spine. The school looked more like a museum than a place for learning. She glanced at Amir, who mouthed, "Where are the dorm parties?" Lena snorted quietly but wondered the same. This place was beautiful, but too perfect. At the landing platform stood Nixar, a tall, slender alien with pale violet skin and luminous white eyes. His arms were clasped behind his back, and his expression was as neutral as a blank canvas. Nixar belonged to the Zilthon species, renowned for their strict adherence to rules and tradition. Next to him stood Vrelak, a quiet and brooding Zinthar student whose dark exoskeleton glinted under the artificial lights. Lena couldn't tell if he was glaring at them or if that was just his resting face. "Welcome to the Galactic Institute of Learning," Nixar said, his voice as cold and smooth as polished stone. "We expect full compliance with all regulations during your stay. Your punctuality, behavior, and adherence to rules will reflect on your species." Lena exchanged a knowing look with Amir, who raised an eyebrow as if to say, "They're gonna love us here." She stifled a grin and gave Nixar her most innocent smile. Of course, rules are important. The human delegation followed Nixar and Vrelak through the pristine hallways, their footsteps echoing softly in the silence. Every corner of the academy was meticulously clean, every student they passed moving with purpose, their gazes fixed forward. There was no idle chatter, no laughter, no signs of spontaneity, just structure and routine, as if the entire school operated on an invisible but immovable clock. Lena couldn't help but feel a pang of homesickness. Back on Earth, a hallway like this would be filled with students swapping stories, cracking jokes, or conspiring about the next party. But here, not even a whisper out of place. The entire atmosphere was suffocating. As they continued through the corridors, Lena noticed some alien students casting curious glances at the humans. One or two even offered awkward nods, though it seemed more out of politeness than genuine interest. Vrelak, walking just behind Nixar, was the only one who seemed remotely intrigued, his compound eyes flicking toward the humans every now and then. Their tour ended in the main hall, a grand chamber with vaulted ceilings that shimmered like the night sky. Nixar stopped and turned sharply, his posture perfectly rigid. "You will find that the Galactic Institute operates on precision and discipline," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "We value punctuality above all. Meals are served at precisely scheduled intervals. There is no unsupervised socializing outside designated hours. Lights out is mandatory at 2100. Amir leaned toward Lena and whispered, "What is this space boot camp?" Lena elbowed him, suppressing a laugh. Nixar's expression remained unreadable, though his eyes flicked toward them briefly, as if he knew something was being said. "Deviation from the rules," Nixar continued, "will not be tolerated. Any violations will result in immediate disciplinary action. Do I make myself clear?" The human students murmured their agreement, though Lena could feel the rebellion simmering just beneath the surface. There was no way they were going to survive this place without shaking things up a little. She glanced at Amir, who gave her a subtle thumbs up. Yeah, this place was about to get interesting. After the briefing, Nixar assigned them to their dormitories. As they filed into their rooms, Lena noticed the rigid organization, beds perfectly aligned, desks arranged with mathematical precision. There wasn't a single poster, trinket, or personal touch in sight. It was as if the rooms had been designed to suck the life out of whoever lived there. Lena plopped onto her bed, groaning. This is worse than a hospital. Where's the personality? Amir from across the room shrugged. At least the beds are comfortable. I give them that. Before Lena could respond, Vrelak appeared at the doorway, his black segmented frame casting a shadow over the threshold. He stared at them for a long moment before speaking. Why do humans laugh so much? Lena blinked, caught off guard by the question. Well, because things are funny? Vrelak tilted his head, as if the concept was utterly alien to him. And pranks? I read about those in your cultural database. They seem unnecessary. Lena grinned. Pranks aren't just about being unnecessary. They're about making people laugh, catching them off guard. They're fun. Fun, Vrelak echoed, as if tasting the word for the first time. Our kind does not have such a concept. Then you're missing out, Amir said from his bed, propping himself up on his elbows. You'll see soon enough. Trust me. Vrelak gave them a long, unreadable look before turning and leaving without another word. Lena exchanged a glance with Amir. He's going to be fun to mess with, she whispered, grinning mischievously. Later that evening, the human students gathered in a common room, whispering excitedly about the day's events. Everyone agreed. The academy was impressive, but far too rigid. Something had to be done to liven things up. And as always, when Earth kids were bored, chaos wasn't far behind. I give it 2 days, Amir said confidently. 2 days before someone cracks. Lena smirked. 1 day, tops, and with that, the wheels of mischief were set in motion. The humans had arrived, and they were already planning their first act of rebellion. This place might have rules, but they had Earth's greatest weapon, creativity born from boredom. The Galactic Institute of Learning had no idea what was coming. The next morning arrived with a sterile hum as the Academy's automated alarm system chimed precisely at 0600. The mechanical tune was designed to gently rouse students from their slumber, ensuring a smooth and efficient start to the day. But today, something was different. Instead of the usual melodic chime, the serene halls of the Galactic Institute of Learning exploded with a chaotic mix of sound. Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Blared across every corner of the campus, followed by the unmistakable guitar riffs of Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. Lena lay sprawled on her bed, a satisfied grin on her face as the music vibrated through the walls. Across the room, Amir shot up, eyes wide with disbelief and delight. You actually did it, he whispered, half laughing, half incredulous. Of course I did, Lena said smugly, pulling her blanket over her head. Gotta make an entrance somehow. Outside their room, chaos was already brewing. Alien students stumbled out of their dorms, looking dazed and confused. Some clutched their heads as if trying to comprehend what they were hearing, while others simply stood frozen, their antennae twitching in bewilderment. The hauntingly beautiful harmonies of Freddie Mercury continued to echo down the halls, transitioning seamlessly into the next Earth anthem, the Macarena. In one hallway, a group of tentacled Falthorians tried to navigate the unfamiliar beat, tangling their limbs in the process. A hovering alien from the Traxi species who was unfamiliar with rhythm bobbed awkwardly in midair, spinning in slow circles as if trying to dance. Lena peeked out into the hallway, barely able to contain her laughter. They're loving it already, she whispered to Amir, who stood beside her, grinning ear to ear. Loving it? I think half of them are malfunctioning, he whispered back, his shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. It wasn't long before Nixar arrived, storming down the corridor with his usual air of cold authority. His violet eyes were narrowed, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked like it might shatter. Behind him trailed several members of the faculty, all looking equally perturbed. Who is responsible for this? Nixar demanded, his voice sharp and controlled, though it was clear he was holding back frustration. Lena and Amir exchanged a quick glance, their expressions a perfect blend of guilt and satisfaction. But before either could answer, Vrelak stepped forward, his dark frame rigid with what appeared to be a mixture of confusion and intrigue. This is music? Vrelak asked, tilting his head slightly. It's Earth music, Lena replied with a grin, leaning casually against the doorway. "Wakes you up better than that boring chime, doesn't it?" Nixar shot her a glare that could have melted steel. "This is a gross violation of Academy protocol. Alarms are not to be tampered with under any circumstances." "But did you die?" Amir muttered under his breath, earning a sharp elbow from Lena to silence him. "This will not be tolerated," Nixar continued, ignoring the comment. "There will be consequences." Vrelak, however, seemed less concerned with punishment and more intrigued by the reaction of his fellow students. "It seems to have sparked interest," he observed, watching as some alien students cautiously bobbed along to the beat, their curiosity outweighing their confusion. "It's just a prank," Lena said with a shrug. "Harmless fun. No one got hurt, right?" Nixar's nostrils flared slightly, and for a moment it seemed as if he might argue. But then a small, unexpected thing happened. One of the hovering Traxi students, still spinning to the rhythm, let out a laugh, a strange melodic sound, almost like wind chimes. The laugh was infectious. Other students, seeing no harm in the situation, began to relax. A Zerithian student with a long snout bobbed his head experimentally, mimicking the Earth students' movements. A ripple of amusement spread through the crowd. Even Vrelak, usually composed and distant, allowed the smallest of smiles to flicker across his features. "I must admit," he said quietly, "it is unique." Nixar's expression remained stern, but there was a flicker of something, perhaps confusion or maybe reluctant curiosity behind his cold gaze. He cleared his throat, gesturing sharply toward the faculty behind him. "Return to your dorms immediately. There will be no further disruptions." The alien students dispersed slowly, some still humming fragments of the music they had just experienced. As they passed, Lena overheard one student muttering, "We should have music like this more often." Once the hallway was clear, Nixar turned back to Lena and Amir, his eyes narrowing. "You two, you are on probation. Any further violation of Academy protocol will result in immediate expulsion." Lena gave him her best innocent smile. "Understood, sir." As soon as Nixar and the faculty disappeared down the corridor, Amir let out a low whistle. "Probation on the first day. That's gotta be a record." Lena grinned, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "I told you we'd shake things up." Later that day, the incident became the talk of the school. While the faculty was predictably unhappy, the alien students were buzzing with excitement. Many of them had never encountered anything like Earth music before, and whispers spread quickly about the humans' boldness. Vrelak, in particular, seemed oddly drawn to Lena and Amir. He approached them during lunch, sliding into a seat across from them with the grace of someone who rarely interacts socially but is determined to try. "That was unexpected," he said, his voice low but without judgment. Lena smirked. "Yeah, well, humans like to keep things interesting." Vrelak tapped one of his clawed fingers thoughtfully against the table. "You said it was a prank. Does your species often engage in such activities?" Amir chuckled. "Oh, buddy, you have no idea." Over the next few hours, word of the human prank spread across the campus. Students from different species began to gather, curious about what other strange and spontaneous customs these humans might introduce. One particularly bold group of Zerithians even attempted to recreate the music on their own instruments, resulting in an odd but oddly charming rendition of the Macarena on alien flutes and chimes. By evening, it was clear that the human influence was already beginning to ripple through the academy. Some students, emboldened by the prank, began experimenting with small, harmless jokes of their own. A Falthorian student placed a tiny holographic projector in a professor's office, causing it to rain glitter whenever the door was opened. Nixar, of course, was not amused, but the rest of the school, they were starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, there was something to be said for a little chaos now and then. As Lena lay in bed that night, a satisfied grin spread across her face. One day, she whispered to Amir, who was already half asleep in the bunk above her. "Told you." From the corner of the room, Vrelak's voice floated softly in the dark. "What will you do next?" Lena chuckled. "Oh, you'll see. The Galactic Institute of Learning might have had rules, but Earthlings, they had creativity, and that was far more dangerous. The prank was only the beginning. By the end of the day, whispers about the humans spread like wildfire across the Galactic Institute of Learning. Curiosity blossomed among the alien students, and for the first time in the Academy's rigid history, there was an air of anticipation. Something unplanned and unpredictable was brewing. The faculty did their best to quell the excitement, but it was like trying to hold back a flood with a spoon. And then Lena had the idea. "We need a party," she announced with a mischievous grin, leaning over the cafeteria table toward Amir, and a small circle of curious alien students. The cafeteria was as eerily quiet as the rest of the school, with students eating their perfectly portioned meals in absolute silence, but Lena was already scheming. "A party?" Vrelak echoed from across the table, his mandibles twitching with confusion. "Yeah," Amir chimed in, leaning forward with enthusiasm. "You know, music, dancing, snacks, games. A place where you can just relax and have fun." "But isn't that disruptive?" asked one of the Zyrithian students, their long snout wrinkling in concern. "There are no designated hours for such activities." "Exactly," Lena said with a wink. "That's what makes it fun." The alien students exchanged uncertain glances, but a flicker of excitement shone in their expressions. The concept was foreign to them, spontaneous gatherings for no practical purpose. But that only made it more intriguing. The humans worked quickly. Lena, Amir, and a handful of conspiratorial alien students found an unused storage room tucked away at the far end of the academy, hidden from prying eyes. Over the course of the afternoon, they transformed it into a makeshift party venue, stringing up lights scavenged from science labs and setting up a rudimentary sound system. "This is going to be epic," Amir whispered as they plugged in the speakers. Lena grinned as she looked around at their handiwork. "All we need now is people." They didn't have to wait long. As word spread, curious students began to trickle in. At first they arrived cautiously, peeking through the doorway as if expecting to be reprimanded at any moment. But as the first beats of music, this time Earth Dance anthems, pulsed through the room, they began to relax. A group of Falthorians twisted their tentacles to the beat, while two Traxi students floated above the crowd, bobbing awkwardly in time with the music. Lena and Amir taught a group of Zyrithians how to do the wave, their elongated bodies swaying in sync with each other. Vrelak stood off to the side, observing the scene with his usual stoic demeanor. "This is strange," he muttered as Lena approached him. "It's only strange because you haven't tried it," Lena teased. "Come on, let me show you how to dance." Vrelak hesitated for a moment, his compound eyes flickering with uncertainty. But then, in a rare display of curiosity, he extended one of his segmented limbs. Lena grabbed his hand and pulled him onto the makeshift dance floor, grinning as she led him through some basic moves. The sight of a normally aloof Zinthar swaying awkwardly to earth music sent ripples of laughter through the crowd. Even Vrelak couldn't help but chuckle, a strange, rasping sound that startled him as much as everyone else. "See?" Lena said, beaming. "Told you it's fun." The party quickly spiraled into joyous chaos. Snacks pilfered from the cafeteria were passed around, and someone discovered an old strobe light in the corner of the storage room, which immediately became the centerpiece of a light show. A daring Zyrithian student started an impromptu limbo competition, bending their elongated spine under the makeshift bar. For the first time, the students of the Galactic Institute experienced something they never thought possible: freedom. Laughter echoed off the walls, and for a brief, beautiful moment, they forgot about curfews and schedules. And then Nixar showed up. The music screeched to a halt as the Zilthon prefect stormed into the room, his violet eyes blazing with fury. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the joyous atmosphere like a knife. The students froze, their excitement evaporating in an instant. Even Vrelak took a step back, his usual composure returning as if a switch had been flipped. Lena stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest, but her grin unwavering. "It's a party," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You know, for fun." Nixar's expression darkened. "This is a violation of every academy rule. There is no protocol for parties." Amir nudged Lena and whispered, "Well, technically, there's no protocol against them either." Lena stifled a laugh as Nixar glared at Amir. "You will all return to your dormitories immediately," Nixar ordered, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "And you, human," he added, pointing a long, thin finger at Lena, "will report to the head administrator in the morning. This reckless behavior will not go unpunished." For a moment, it seemed as if the party had ended in disaster. The students began to shuffle toward the exit, their heads hanging low. But just as they reached the door, something unexpected happened. "Wait," Vrelak said, his deep voice cutting through the tension. All eyes turned to him as he stepped forward, his dark frame towering over the crowd. "This party," he began slowly, as if choosing his words carefully. "It was enjoyable." A murmur of agreement rippled through the students. "And it caused no harm," Vrelak continued, his gaze steady as he looked at Nixar. "Perhaps not all deviations from protocol are bad." Nixar stared at him, his expression unreadable. For a moment it seemed as if he might argue, but then to everyone's shock he sighed. "This will not happen again," he said, though there was a flicker of doubt in his voice. With that, Nixar turned on his heel and marched out of the room, his robes billowing behind him. As soon as he was gone, the room erupted into hushed whispers. Did we just survive that?" Amir asked, wide-eyed. Lena grinned. "We did, and it was totally worth it. The party may have ended early, but the spark had been lit. For the first time in the Academy's history, students were beginning to question the rigid structure that governed their lives. They had tasted freedom, and they wanted more. And as Lena looked around at the grinning faces of her new alien friends, she knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. The next few days at the Galactic Institute of Learning were unlike anything the school had ever seen. Though the Humans Party had been shut down, its influence lingered in the minds of the students. Conversations that once revolved around academic schedules and assignments now shifted to something far more thrilling: possibilities. It started small. In the early hours of the next morning, a group of Zyrithians organized an impromptu midnight astronomy picnic. They crept out of their dorms past curfew, gathering under the Academy's artificial starlit dome, sharing strange, glowing fruits while gazing at distant galaxies. They didn't know all the rules of a picnic. They had read about the concept in Earth's database, but they knew one thing: it was exhilarating to do something not listed on the day's itinerary. When Lena heard about the picnic, she couldn't stop grinning. "See, I told you, fun is contagious." Amir laughed, tossing a piece of fruit into his mouth. "You started a revolution, and all it took was a boombox and some stolen snacks. And the revolution kept spreading. The very next day, a Traxi student invented a game involving levitating cushions and soft alien flora, an alien twist on Earth's pillow fights. The sight of tentacled creatures launching cushions at each other mid-air was both absurd and heartwarming. The humans, of course, joined in without hesitation, leading to a chaotic match that ended with everyone collapsed on the floor, breathless from laughter. Meanwhile, Vrelak had changed, though he would never admit it outright. The once distant Zinthar found himself gravitating toward Lena and Amir, asking subtle but curious questions about Earth customs. He even invited them to help him prank a classmate, something unheard of for his species. Lena's eyes sparkled as she agreed. "I knew you had it in you, Vrelak." Nixar, on the other hand, was having a much harder time with the changes sweeping the Academy. As a prefect, it was his duty to maintain order, and the sudden wave of spontaneity threatened everything he stood for. He stormed into the administrative office one afternoon, arms crossed over his chest, frustration etched into every line of his expression. "We have to put a stop to this chaos," he declared to the head administrator. "The students are violating protocols left and right. This is unacceptable." The head administrator, an elderly Zilthon with pale, glassy eyes, gave Nixar a long, measured look. "No one has come to harm," she pointed out slowly. "Perhaps we should consider what these humans have introduced. It seems to have fostered a sense of community among the students." Nixar's jaw tightened. "Order is what fosters community," he argued. "Rules create harmony." The administrator tilted her head thoughtfully. "Perhaps, but have you noticed the students laughing together? Students from different species, ones who have never interacted before, now talking, playing, learning from one another." Nixar opened his mouth to argue but stopped himself. He had noticed. He had even seen students helping each other outside of class, acts of kindness and cooperation that hadn't existed before. And though he hated to admit it, the laughter had not been unpleasant to hear. Meanwhile, Lena and Amir were hard at work planning something even bigger. "We need to go all out," Lena whispered to Vrelak one evening as they gathered in a quiet corner of the library. "Something no one can shut down." Vrelak leaned in, intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" Lena grinned. "An intergalactic talent show." Amir's eyes widened. "A what?" "A showcase," Lena explained. "Students can show off dances, songs, games, whatever makes their species unique. It'll be fun, and it'll be educational." She leaned back, crossing her arms smugly. "And the best part? They can't ban it because it's technically an educational activity." Vrelak's mandibles twitched in what Lena had come to recognize as amusement. "Clever," he admitted, "but how do we get the other students involved?" "Easy," Amir said with a grin. "We invite them." In the days leading up to the talent show, students whispered excitedly in hallways and study rooms. Invitations were passed around secretly, handwritten in dozens of different alien scripts. Excitement buzzed in the air, building with each passing day. When the night of the talent show finally arrived, the students transformed the old storage room once again. This time it was decorated with alien tapestries and glowing crystals from the far reaches of the galaxy. The air shimmered with anticipation as students from every corner of the academy gathered, their faces lit with excitement. The performances were unlike anything Lena and Amir had ever seen. A group of Falthorians performed a mesmerizing light dance, their bioluminescent tentacles twirling in hypnotic patterns. A Zyrithian student played an instrument that resembled a glass harp, producing hauntingly beautiful melodies that resonated in the hearts of everyone present. Even Vrelak took part, demonstrating an intricate Zinthar martial art that was as graceful as it was terrifying. And then it was the humans' turn. Lena and Amir, grinning from ear to ear, performed a lively earth dance routine that had the entire crowd clapping along, tentacles, claws, and all. For a moment, as the music echoed through the room and students from dozens of species cheered and laughed together, the lines that divided them seemed to disappear. They weren't humans or aliens anymore. They were simply students, sharing a moment of pure, unfiltered joy. Nixar arrived midway through the event, prepared to shut it down, but he stopped in his tracks as soon as he saw the scene before him. Students laughing, playing, learning from one another in ways that no textbook could ever teach. For the first time in his life, Nixar hesitated. He stood quietly at the edge of the room, watching as the talent show unfolded, and as the night wore on, a strange thought crept into his mind, a thought that both intrigued and unsettled him. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than following the rules. The talent show had been a turning point. The once strict halls of the Galactic Institute of Learning were now buzzing with life. Alien students, inspired by the humans' infectious energy, began embracing spontaneity in ways the faculty had never imagined. Small acts of creativity, previously unthinkable, became daily occurrences. Some students held secret gatherings to teach one another dances or share games from their home planets, while others explored music and storytelling, creating unexpected friendships across species. Despite the head administrator's grudging tolerance, however, the faculty still watched the humans with wary eyes. Officially, the rules remained in place: curfews, structured schedules, strict behavior expectations. But unofficially, it was clear the students had tasted freedom, and there was no going back. But Lena wasn't finished yet. "We need to go bigger," she said one evening, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "The talent show was just the beginning. If we're really going to change things, we need to leave a mark, something they'll never forget." Amir grinned. "I'm listening." Vrelak, now fully on board with the human schemes, leaned closer. "What do you propose?" Lena's grin widened. "We organize the first ever Intergalactic Festival of Fun, a day where students from every species showcase games, traditions, music, whatever makes their culture unique. No rules, no restrictions, just fun." Amir let out a low whistle. "That's ambitious." "Ambitious is what we do," Lena replied with a wink. Vrelak tilted his head thoughtfully. "The faculty will never approve." "They won't need to," Lena said. "We won't ask." And so the plan was set. Over the next few days, the students worked in secret, spreading word of the festival through encrypted messages and whispered conversations. Every species contributed something: games, food, music, or performances, and excitement built to a fever pitch. The date was chosen carefully, the eve of the Academy's Founding Day celebration, when the faculty would be preoccupied with official ceremonies. When the day finally arrived, the transformation was nothing short of magical. The students took over the central courtyard, filling it with colorful banners, glowing lights, and stalls representing every culture in the galaxy. The air was alive with the sound of music, Earth's pop anthems blending with alien rhythms in a strange but beautiful harmony. A Zyrithian student demonstrated an ancient ceremonial dance while a group of Falthorians performed acrobatics with their bioluminescent tentacles. Traxi students organized a race, their levitating bodies zooming through the air in dizzying loops. Human students introduced games like charades and dodgeball, adapted for alien physiology, resulting in hilarious and chaotic matches. Lena and Amir ran through the festival, their laughter mingling with the joyful sounds of students from every corner of the galaxy, Everywhere they looked, students were playing, dancing, and sharing stories. The lines between species and cultures blurred as friendships blossomed in the unlikeliest of places. Even Nixar, who had been determined to maintain order, found himself drawn into the festivities. He stood at the edge of the courtyard, his stern expression softening as he watched a group of Zinthar and humans attempting to perform a dance routine together. Awkward, uncoordinated, but filled with genuine joy. Lena spotted him from across the courtyard and nudged Amir. "Think we can get him to join?" she whispered. Amir grinned. Only one way to find out. They approached Nixar with mischievous smiles. "Come on, Nixar," Lena said playfully. "You know you want to." Nixar crossed his arms, but there was no real annoyance in his eyes. "This is against protocol." "Yeah," Lena replied with a grin, "but it's also fun. Just try it." For a moment, Nixar hesitated, but then, to everyone's surprise, he stepped onto the dance floor. The students around him erupted in cheers, and Lena and Amir pulled him into the dance. At first, Nixar's movements were stiff and awkward, but as the music flowed through him, something shifted. His limbs loosened, and a reluctant smile crept onto his face. The sight of the normally rigid prefect dancing, however awkwardly, became the highlight of the festival. Students from every species joined in, laughing and cheering as Nixar twirled and stumbled through the dance. It was pure, unfiltered joy. But just as the festival reached its peak, the head administrator arrived, flanked by a group of faculty members. Silence fell over the courtyard as the students braced for the inevitable reprimand. The head administrator's stern gaze swept over the scene. Students from dozens of species dancing, playing, and sharing food in open defiance of the Academy's rules. For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the head administrator stepped forward. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. Lena stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "It's a festival," she said simply. "We wanted to share our cultures with each other. No rules, no schedules, just fun." The administrator's gaze was sharp, her expression unreadable. "You realize this is a violation of Academy protocol?" "Yes," Lena admitted, "but look at what it's brought. Students from different species, who barely spoke to each other before, are now friends. We've learned more from each other in one day of fun than we ever could from textbooks." The head administrator studied her for a moment, then glanced around at the students. Slowly, the tension in her expression softened. "Perhaps there is value in spontaneity," she murmured, almost to herself. Then, to everyone's shock, she turned to the faculty and gave a small, deliberate nod. "Let them continue." The students erupted into cheers and the music resumed, louder and more joyful than ever. The festival carried on late into the night, with students dancing under the stars and sharing stories that would be remembered for generations. As the festivities wound down, Nixar approached Lena and Amir, his expression unreadable but his eyes warm. "You have changed things," he said quietly. Lena grinned. "That's what humans do. And sometimes," Nixar added, "change is necessary." The festival marked the beginning of a new era for the Galactic Institute of Learning. The faculty, inspired by the students' unity and joy, agreed to loosen the rules just a little. Once a month, the students were allowed a day free from schedules, a day dedicated to creativity, fun, and spontaneous activities. It wasn't a perfect revolution, but it was a start. And for Lena, Amir, Vrelak, and the rest of the students, it was more than enough. As Lena lay in bed that night, exhausted but happy, she received a message from Earth. It was a simple question. "How's the exchange program going?" Lena grinned as she typed her reply. "Let's just say we made a few adjustments." And with that, she set her tablet aside, closed her eyes, and drifted off to sleep, content in the knowledge that, for the first time, the Galactic Institute of Learning had truly learned something new.